this weird switcheroo things that's going on automatically, some time to normalize, so that I can then get our guest for the evening, who I'm going to tell you about right now, so I can get him back to full screen, and then that'll buy me about 45 seconds of normalcy before this screen switching happens again. So just know that if I'm getting a little busy with the camera angles, it is to avoid any kind of, I don't know, blank screens, fidgeting, all that stuff. I'm just trying to make it as smooth of a visual experience for you until I figure out what the hell's happening, because it's happened before. And we will just see what else is being thrown our way. But this week, I should say, has been a really great one, and tonight begins a new month. It is May 1st, ladies and gentlemen, 2025. It's a Thursday night, and wherever you're watching, on Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, DLive, Kick, wherever the hell it is, but especially tonight, welcome aboard once again our wonderful friends on Badlands. It's our Badlands syndication night, and I really love being over there, and it's great having so many new friends that are joining us week to week now. And just to let you know, by the way, tonight is the first night of the Badlands Great American Restoration Tour in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Great featured speakers there. There's virtual tickets that are, you may not be able to get to Plymouth, Massachusetts tonight or tomorrow, but you can watch virtually. Badlandsmedia.tv/events. There's great virtual tickets that can still be bought, and you can watch live as everybody in attendance pours hot coffee in Zach Payne's lap, one at a time, as they single file, they pour hot coffee into Zach Payne's lap, and then they put him onto the dunk tank plank, and he's going to be dunked all night. I told you, it's not an event unless somebody gets dunked. Anyway. Oh, the Andrews sisters now. Yep, the wedding anniversary is coming up. That was our song. Oh, well, anyway, welcome to the show. It's going to be a good one tonight, and when I say good one, I mean a great one. I cannot wait to talk with our guest this evening. That's Darren Monahan. Darren Monahan was a corrections officer at San Quentin in the late 80s. And he got to be working around, and, tending to some very dangerous and very famous individuals. So I want to just talk about that. I just want to talk to him. I just want to have an interview on the books with him. He's a very interesting guy, and that'll be good. Here's another thing for you that we will cover tomorrow, though. You remember we did this on Friday? We were talking about the sperm racing that was going to happen. Guess what? So apparently it was all bullshit. Now, I was wondering just how it would be possible to mimic the fluid nature of the vagina or the uterus or wherever all that stuff happens. I don't know female anatomy. I don't even know my own anatomy. But I just thought, how the hell what are you going to do? Well, I guess we're going to find out how they faked it. At least that's what they're saying over here. The world's first sperm race seemed too good to be true. And it was. It was computer generated. You know what they should have done? It should have been like when you go to a carnival or something like that, and everybody lines up with your squirt guns, and you have to hit the little bullseye, and you have the horses that go across and you see who wins? Should have just been little sperm. And I mean, you still raise awareness for it. At least it wouldn't be so depressing. I thought we were actually going to see some sperm racing here, but I guess that just means that there's more room for somebody to actually do it one day successfully. We'll talk about that tomorrow, even though I probably said everything I needed to say. All right, well, thank you again to Badlands, and let's get this one started. Let's talk a little bit more, just a couple more minutes before Darren joins us, and then we're just going to go for a nice little ride. All right, so with that being said, sit back, relax, do me a favor, and share the show wherever you're watching it, whether it's live or on demand. It is time to do our thing. All right? Be right back.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's run!
Little hiccup. Hold on, I can't read the format tonight yet until the monitors finish switching around. Very antsy tonight. Welcome to the show, my friends. Welcome to the show. I can't wait to get to all of your calls later on. We'll be able to take calls in the second half. We're also going to read through your super chats. We have super chats available on YouTube. Just hit the little $. Same thing over there for Rumble with the Rumble rants. Over on Quite Frankly.tv with Pill.net, nestled cozily in the center of it. You've got the gold pills. They are all read with love, with enthusiasm. You can make a shout out. You can tell a joke. You can share some sort of an anecdote that is, I don't know, hopefully not limited by the character limits there. Just, it's one way of many to call in and to get your voice and your thoughts on the record over here. So there you have it. There's also, quite frankly, superchat.com. We already have one that was in there waiting for me, so I might as well just shout out Jay Britz right now. Jay Britz says, out tonight, so I'll catch you on the flip side. Well, thank you, Jay. I know you'll be here in spirit, and then there you have it. There's nothing else to say on that one. Jay's a good guy, and just layering that in there. So, tonight, we often spend our time on this show and other shows. Everybody does it these days. Fantasizing. What do we fantasize about? Oh boy, I don't know. Getting rid of the IRS, constitutional order. To that point, keeping the money that you earn, it's not stolen and given to somebody else, so their votes can be bought and you could be villainized. Oh, there's so much that we fantasize about. Supernatural justice, the second coming. Oh man, I've been fantasizing about the second coming a lot now. Because there's so much, I don't believe anything's, to a massive degree, I don't really think anything's going to change until the real judge comes down. And that's going to hurt me too. Because what the hell am I? But I'm not as bad as other people. At least I don't think I am. Well, anyway, we spent a lot of time fantasizing and having fun. How many third graders can we beat up in one sitting if they all attacked us in a group? What can we do there? We have done it all on this show. But the one thing that we fantasize about more than most is who we would like to send to prison. Who on earth would we like most to send to prison? And I was very extreme. That's part of the reason why I was so excited about bringing on tonight's guest. And having to set a night aside where we're able to talk to somebody who has been in there, who has a story to tell, who has been where we want to send so many people. So many people. Now, he hasn't been to Guantanamo. I don't think so. But let's talk about him. Darren Monahan. Darren Monahan. I have Darren's URL in the description of this episode. He started working in corrections at San Quentin prison in 1986. That's a year after I was born. And spent years looking over some of the country's most dangerous inmates, and including some of the more high profile. And we are going to be discussing all of that and more, especially what Darren has learned over the course of his journey and the time spent undercover, and how that perspective may actually be applied to address some of society's issues today. And I'm really, really excited to have him on the show tonight. Darren, welcome aboard and good evening to you.
Hey, good evening. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you on. So I would just want, hold on, I'm having some technical difficulties. So every once in a while, I'm going to, there you go. Now there's Darren, everybody. On with me. See?
There we go.
That's it. So Darren, thank you so much for the time tonight. You grew up in California, did you not?
Yes, I did. Yes, I grew up in San Jose, California.
Okay, so then that's about a couple hours away from San Quentin then.
It's about an hour and a half from San Quentin.
Okay. All right. So then I'd love to just talk about your crossing paths first and foremost. With, let's see here. You were at I know I heard a little bit about your story. You crossed paths with a corrections officer recruiting booth while you were actually hanging out pretty often with the Hells Angels. And I just wanted to know about that dynamic there, because I've known some Hells Angels. My band played a New Year's Eve show for the Hells Angels at their club in one of the chapters in Westchester, New York. And I know there's a lot of stereotypes that get taken around with those guys, but they're also really interesting. And I was just wondering what your relationship with them were. You never were a member, were you?
Yeah, no. I was never a member. I had a good friend of mine that I actually worked with at a gas station who had became a prospect. He was a hang around and then a prospect. And then one of his good friends was a full patch member. And that's who I was at the fairgrounds with that night was my friend from the gas station and the other guy, the full patch member. And we had came across that booth, the San Quentin recruiting booth. And I was just standing there looking at the pictures. I was in awe because it looked just like it does on TV and movies and stuff. And I was only 20 at the time. And the guy kept trying to get me to fill out an application. And I said, no. And as I'm walking away, he said, well, you don't even know how much we make. Well, the other guy, the full patch member, turned and said, hey, man, leave the kid alone. He said he doesn't want to work there. And I said, well, wait a minute. How much do you make? Back then it was it'd start off at $1,800 a month. And I think I'm making $1,000 a month at a machine shop at the time. And so I just filled out the application. And as time goes on, the next thing I know, they're wanting me to take a written test. So I take the written test, and then they said I had to take a physical agility and an oral board test. And that's when I was going to drop out. And I was at this muffler shop where my buddies were, and I told them I don't think I'm going to go through with this test. And a couple of them said, well, why not? And I said, well, it's kind of like to me at the time it was kind of like being almost a snitch, right? Not quite the same thing, but like a cop, which I wound up to be. But they said, no, man, you need to follow through. You need to take that job. I'm like, well, why? They said, well, because it's got benefits, it pays good. You're gonna have a retirement system. You know, you hang out with the club, and they're just gonna wind up and take things from you. You're not gonna get a retirement from that. And so I listened to them, and I followed through. And next thing I know, went to the Corrections Academy in 1986. They had to wait for me to turn 21.
That's great. That's unexpectedly. I mean, again, this is all born from stereotype, but most people would say, "Wow, that's wonderful advice from a pretty rough crowd." And right. So what? That just in itself is just like, thinking about retirement and thinking about the future. If you have an opportunity like that, that's fantastic. But what did you have to do to earn your patches at that time? Is it the same as today? And were you looking forward to doing that, trying to get full membership?
I had thought about it, because my buddy was doing it, and I had a Harley back then, and thought it was kind of the cool thing to do. I never looked into it too deeply on what was really necessary for me to earn the patches. I know I had seen a lot of hang-arounds and prospects, and they were given a lot of chores to do, look after the bikes, move the bikes, be there at their call. If they called, needed beer or something, they would, but wherever they're at, they would leave and go get them beer and take it to them. I know they go through a lot to earn the patches, and it's not easy. Sometimes I think that they might have saw in me that I might not have had it in me to do what they did, and that's why they gave me the advice they did. I'm not sure, but I'm glad I got the advice and followed through with it.
Oh, me too. I mean, it's the reason why we're talking tonight. It's really an incredible story. You coming up in the 80s, did you know anyone who was at the Altamont concert in 1969?
No, I did not.
No. So you never got to meet like Sonny Barger or anything like that?
No, I met Sonny Barger before at a motorcycle rally, but that was just fanfare. Everybody stood in line and waited to meet him. So that was it. I know people who knew some people from the Altamont from the concert, but I didn't know anybody personally.
So when now you've taken this advice, you're saying, all right, you know what? I'm going to go with the training. We're going to go through with this. And what do you remember about the actual, beyond the fitness test, what do you remember about the training for your new career? Because it's not even just about, it's not so much about protocols, but it's almost, you're getting ready to go in there into a pretty, what could be a hostile environment. And so I wonder what they are doing at that time to get you ready, not only with, legal protocols being inside the prison, but also just trying to get you acclimated to the kind of environment you're going to be in.
Correct. Back then, I've heard it's changed a lot now, but back then in '86, you actually had to live there in Gulp, California, was where the Corrections Academy was, and you lived in dorms on bunk beds. You could only leave on Wednesday nights if you earned it, and Saturdays and Sundays if you earned it. They could take it away whenever they wanted. And you just went over several different subjects. Self-defense, what was some of it? You went over a bunch of legal stuff, procedures in different prisons, and it went on for 6 weeks. So the first 3 weeks you were a junior, and they had little rules. They had little rules going on where you couldn't, like they had senior blocks on the sidewalk, and if you stepped on the senior blocks, well, then they could make you do push-ups, things like that. And then there was nights where you would be put on fire watch, and so you didn't get to sleep. So you might not sleep for a few days. I've heard it's changed a lot, and they took a lot of that away now, and they can go home now. But it was. I almost want to say my corrections academy was harder than my police academy I went through years later.
At what point was the police academy? That's when you relocated to the East Coast?
No, it was Richmond, California.
Okay.
So that was in 94. 94, I went to Richmond, California as a police officer.
Okay, so now when did you know that you were heading to San Quentin? Unless was that what this was always about? Were you training specifically for San Quentin, or was this where after you got through this academy situation, you're then assigned to a prison?
While you were going to the academy, they would assign you which prison you're going to. You could request. You can put in, I think it was 2 requests. Like if you want to stay locally, but they could never guarantee you that. One of my requests was San Quentin because it was closest to my home, and I got San Quentin. A whole bunch of us got San Quentin. There was a staff shortage there for a while. Sergeant Birchfield was killed in '86 by an inmate, and Sergeant Birchfield was stabbed through the heart after the inmate was shot with a rifle through his heart. So the inmate was able to get shot through his heart and still make it to Sergeant Birchfield and stab him and kill him. So that always stuck in our head.
Yeah. For
all of us that were going to San Quentin. We were pretty much terrified.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Altamont, in 1969 from before, that was also, just remember, that was also the year that Johnny Cash performed at San Quentin in 1969. When you got there in 86, aside from everything just being new and you have that mindset of I might be heading into a war zone here, was there anybody left who was still around to see that show in 69 that you spoke to? Anybody ever spoke about it still?
Yeah, back then there was a Sergeant Wordy and a Sergeant Davenport, and they had been there the longest. And when I walked in there, I was the youngest for a while, at 21 years old. And Sergeant Wordy and Sergeant Davenport would talk about some of the different concerts and stuff going on. and both of them had actually worked at Alcatraz before they came to San Quentin.
Wow.
That's how far the history went back with them guys.
That's that's some resume. That's something to put on a resume there. If you worked at Alcatraz, man, that's some OG stuff right there. When you go in there though, talking about just a little bit about prison culture shock, essentially. For the average person, we think of prison as almost like a terrarium. It's self-contained ecosystem with its own rules and all that stuff. We don't really know what's going on there. But even for you, what are some of the lessons that a wet behind the ears, fresh out of the academy corrections officer in 1986 is going to be learning on the job that you just can't prepare for in the training? Like, what do you learn that you just have to be on the job to understand?
You had to learn how to talk to inmates. Most of them, of course, were older than me. You had to learn how to communicate and get them to do what you needed them to do. Most of them would do it just off their own programming. They knew, at a certain time they had to go do this, and a certain time they had to do that. I learned that the more I just treated them with respect, the more respect I got back. I remember working in the industries once and was told to go up on the loft and tell the inmates to leave, or to work was over, go lock up. And I remember this specifically because back then all we had was a whistle that we had to blow. We didn't have alarms. We didn't have anything that they have nowadays. And I remember walking back up there and telling everybody, "Hey, it's time to go. Let's lock up." And they all said, "Okay." This is, I think, my first week there, actually. And everybody said, "Okay." Well, 3 guys stayed way in the back in this little dark bench that was way in the back. And they just sat there. And so I went back towards them and said, "Hey, guys, it's time to go." They said, "Yeah, we heard." Well, I turned and started walking back to the stairs, thinking they were behind me, and they weren't. So I went back, and through the academy, they tell you, don't let them punk you. They're going to test you. They're going to see what you're going to do. So I went back to them, not thinking in my head. I said, hey, boys, let's go. And they stood up. One skinny guy stood up and walked by me and stared at me hard. Another guy stood up and walked within about an inch from me, just looking at me. And then this gigantic dude stood up. I don't know if you remember Michael Clark Duncan. He was an actor that's just
absolutely
huge. Or Ronnie Coleman, someone like that. This is what this guy looked like. And he walks up to me and he points at my chest. He doesn't touch me, but he points at my chest and he goes, "You're lucky you're new." And I remember looking at him going, what I do? And he goes, "You called us boy. You do not call black people boy. That's disrespectful to us." And I said, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't think about it. Didn't know that." And he said, "Like I said, you're lucky you're new. You do that again, you won't be leaving up here." And he walked off. And it was one of those things that was I just said it. I probably knew better at the time, but I just said it. And not thinking. And I learned real quick to little things like that you learn on your own that the academy is not going to teach you.
Yeah, it's like walking. Well, in modern day, that's like walking into a classroom and saying, "Okay, guys," and getting the wrath of some feminist or something like that. We've heard a lot about that recently, where you're like you said, a casual euphemism or
Right.
colloquial term, guys, boy, what's up, boys, whatever. So yeah, on the job training or something. That's pretty big. Talking, because I imagine things are pretty volatile for some people, but. Where do you get a lot more of the problems with? Is it people who are serving short, middle term sentences or life sentences? Where I would have to imagine sometimes some people feel like they have nothing to lose, or some get antsy. Like, where do you have most problems with people in situations like that? Short, middle, or long term prison sentences?
I would say more of the middle term. The short term guys are terrified. They're just trying to figure it out like everybody else. They've just gotten there. They want to do, if they got sentenced to a couple years, they want to do their years and get out, right? Some of the other guys trying to make a reputation for themselves, like they're the ones that are going to give you the problems. The lifers, they don't want any problems. I think those were the easiest ones that I ever worked with, were guys sentenced to life. And then even some of the death row inmates. I wound up working in the adjustment center for the majority of my time at San Quentin, so I didn't have a lot of mainline time working amongst the inmates that were just out walking around. But to answer your question, it would be the midterm guys, the guys that had been there a couple of years and they only got another couple of years left, and they're trying to prove themselves, make themselves somebody on the yard, and have the other inmates respect them.
Is that where a lot more of the gang activity that we hear about, we watch in movies and TV shows, is that a one of those need to join kind of situations if you're going to be able to navigate that prison culture? Do you need to be down with somebody, or can you really be a lone wolf in a situation like that?
I think it actually is on you and your attitude and how you carry yourself. Some people will gravitate to the gangs to make their life easier, and then they get protection from the gang, so they don't have to fight, they don't have to do much. So I saw some guys that were punked into being part of the gang. Unfortunately, prison works off of race.
I was going to ask.
So the black people hang with the black people, the Mexicans hang with the Mexicans, the whites hang with the whites, and the Asians kind of hang with the Asians, and it's just that way. I think it's that way to this day. Back then, it was really big like that, and that each one of those races has their own gang, so they wind up and fall into the gang life while they're in prison. And then you have the Hispanics that are you have the Southern Hispanics and the Northern Hispanics. So the Southerners would hang with the Southerners, and the Northerners would hang with the Northerners, if that makes any sense.
It does. And it's kind of made clear, even in, like I said, in pop culture depictions of what's going on behind the scenes. And I can see why it always will just naturally break down to race and ethnicity. I always wonder if there's ever exceptions to that, but it just seems like the way we are in general. I mean, this is how most neighborhoods in this country form, just the way it is. And so I can see that, birds of a feather, at that, especially in the most do or die kind of situations where it could be a lot of life and death. It makes total sense. Now, as far as high profile inmates go, this is where we start getting into the really interesting stuff here with your story. I mean, were there any high profile people mixed in with general population, or did a certain level of public notoriety always require them to be separated?
Back in the 80s and early 90s, everybody that I knew of was separated. They were in San Quentin at the time was a level 4 prison, and the majority of the whole prison were security housing units or ad seg units. So you only had, I think West Block was mainline, and I think one other small cell block was mainline. Everything else at San Quentin at the time were all lockup units. You had death row, you had the adjustment center, you had death row overflow, and then the adjustment center would hold inmates that caused problems on death row or other ad seg units. They would come to us in the adjustment center, and I wound up, a lieutenant wound up liking me. To work in the adjustment center, you had to get handpicked, and it sounds goofy now when I say it, but when you worked the adjustment center, you were somebody. It was, a lot of people wanted to work in there, and so we'd have the most dangerous inmates at the time in there, and if we had problems with them in there, we sent them to 4A and Folsom. And if Folsom had problems with their inmates in 4A, they would send them to us. And about that time, Corcoran opened, and Pelican Bay wasn't opened yet, so we were able to send some of them to Corcoran. Corcoran round up to be a pretty rough, high level prison.
Jeez, I just imagine. You don't have anybody that that's still on the inside, do you? Working inside of the systems, and where what it is, what's going on today, even on a county level.
I do know a few people that still working inside the prison. Some of them work in Vacaville and Solano State Prison. They say it's totally different now. They've released all the death row inmates, and they've spread them out throughout the whole state of California, and they're actually out walking on the main line now. Some of them can't for protective reasons, so they're locked up, and they don't call it protective custody yards anymore. It's sensitive need yards. Everything's gotten really soft in there, and it's really changed a lot.
I'll tell you, I wanted to save this for the end, toward the end, but I have friends that, since we got out of high school and one out of college, went right into corrections here in my neck of the woods in New York. And over the course of the last 15, 20 years, what I have heard from them, just as far as rules of engagement, has been, I don't know how it's a tough job as it is, sensitive job as it is, as you're making perfectly clear right now. But it really just seems like in many places, the inmates are in control of the prisons now. And that's why I'm getting directly from them that it has become increasingly hard to remove somebody that's being, hostile, violent from an area. You can't even clear them out because there's a certain way you can touch them. And of course, when you start talking about the tinkering of language to soften it up, that's just like an end phase thing that happens there, where you just start changing the way you describe a situation. Forget about the actual physical contact that has to be made sometimes. Right.
And I actually saw some of that back in the early 90s when I left San Quentin in 92. I went to Solano State Prison, and I didn't like it there at all. It was way soft. The inmates ran more of the prison there. The inmates kind of run all the prisons a little bit. They can make or break your day if they want to. But that's one of the things that led me to move on to a police department. Was I didn't like how Solano State Prison was ran, and at San Quentin, the officers were always right. At Solano State Prison, the inmates were right, and you would get in trouble at Solano. And you didn't even have to do much, but you would.
So getting back to San Quentin then, and the high profiles, Richard Ramirez. I mean, you sent me some pictures. We're going to go through them a lot more later on, but here is a booking photo that you sent me. Now, this guy, I remember this guy on television even as a little kid, and I don't know. I didn't know too much about the world at that point, Darren, but I knew that this guy was a bad egg. What can you tell us about your time around Richard Ramirez?
Richard Ramirez, he was on the first floor of the adjustment center. On the left side, we called it Famed Row at the time, so we had a lot of the famous inmates down there. And he was a strange person. He would never go to yard. One day he decided he wanted to go to the yard and got stabbed, and we pulled him right back off the yard. And he would talk and tell stories of what occurred, of course, because I would ask a lot of times. And it wasn't him that committed his crimes and murders. It was his friend. Well, he would never tell us who his friend is. And the other thing that was strange about Richard was his religion allowed him to do whatever he wanted. And so he would, in his mind, he could never do wrong. So I personally asked him, so that means you can kill people? He goes, yes. He goes, and that's not a sin. And so I said, so you did do? He goes, no, I didn't. My friends did. It's like, okay. And he was strange. He told me I had small forearms once, so I still do forearm curls, trying to make my forearms bigger.
That son of a bitch. I'll tell you, anybody that works out any day, you want to talk about make or break a day, make or break a year. Tell somebody that, your forearms are just not prime. Oh, right. Man, that's it. I'll see you. I'll be in the gym for the next 3 months. So
30 years later, I'm still doing forearm curls.
So when he says my religion, he's talking about his personal religion. He's not talking about some denomination, some Baptist church or something like that. That's the church of Richard Ramirez. That's what you're talking about when he says that.
Correct.
Okay.
In his mind, he had his own religion.
Oh man. Oh man. That's just, no, you can tell. And how often would you spend time with people and actually ask them about their cases? Do you wait until they present, like they open the door? You would never pry yourself, would you?
No, pretty often though, because you'd have to put him in the holding cages a lot when you're either running yard or if he had a court. Back then he was still going to court for some of the cases, so he would be in the holding cage up front waiting for the deputies to come pick him up and take him to court. So you just kill time. You'd ask questions. Sometimes when you're running showers, you'd talk to him for a minute. You would see him about daily because you're passing out lunches, you're running yard, you're running showers. So you go by his cell just about daily. And I remember you would do random cell searches because that was part of your job. And going through his cell one time, I noticed all the female photographs that he had because women would send him photos and letters, and they were in love with him. And he would scratch out the eyeballs of all the pictures. And I thought it was weird. And then I later on, this whole saga with Richard Ramirez winds up back at me when I worked at the Richmond Police Department because one of his girlfriends wound up being a volunteer at the Richmond Police Department later on down the road. So that was kind of strange too.
So did her relationship with him inspire her wanting to work with police, or did he actually woo a police officer?
No, she was wound up to being a volunteer for the Richmond Police Department.
Okay.
and a volunteer chaplain, but she was a person selected on his jury, and she felt sorry for him. Thought he was good looking. Felt sorry for him. But after the fact, she actually voted to give him the death penalty for, I think it was his 17th homicide or 17th murder at the time.
Well, something had to have gone awry. Something had to have gone sour there for her to have her whatever kind of compassionate view she had of his situation had to have been flipped by some piece of information, or he must have showed some side of himself to her that shattered all of these very silly, I don't know, these silly thoughts about him maybe being anything other than a monster.
Yeah, I don't know. I know she visited him a lot, and that's where I first saw her and met her. Was I had to me and another officer would have to take him to the visiting room or the visiting cage, you could call it, and she would sit on the other side. And I remember seeing her all the time. And then years later, when I started working at Richmond Police Department, I walked in there and saw her, and I asked her because I'm like, this is strange. And then she told me the story.
So then, and this picture I'm putting up on screen, we'll get to others later on in the show here.
Yeah.
But he signed this for you. He said to Monahan, Richard Ramirez, and he actually signed Night Stalker. He embraced that.
Yes, he did. I had got that out of the newspaper and took it in there with me one day and asked him to. I showed it to him. Said, "Have you seen this?" He said, "Yeah." Well, he saw it on the news, I think. And I said, "Here, sign it real quick." And that's what he put on there.
Good Lord. I mean, what a relic. That is one hell of a relic there, man. It's just, it's nuts. Okay. So from Richard Ramirez, was there any kind of special, because I know that you also looked after Tookie Williams, the founder of the Crips. And I'm sure there were many, he was in there with many of his own soldiers. How do you compete with that kind of an authority figure in prison, where this is a general in his own right, and he's actually in there with a lot of his troops? Do you get him to, is that a guy that you really become friends with so that he can actually help keep things in order on the inside? What is that relationship like?
Tookie Williams, yeah, he was the leader and starter of the Crips. He was very respectful. Never rude or mean, other than the officer he assaulted. That's why he came to us. But he didn't want any problems. He didn't want any disruption in their program. So when they went to yard, I remember him going out to the yard. They just treated him like a king out on the yard. And us as correctional officers, there was no reason for us to disrespect him or do anything stupid or silly, because he didn't cause us problems, so we just didn't cause him problems. And he, I don't want to say he was okay, because I feel terrible about his victims and stuff that wound up got killed, but he wasn't a problem. The only time he was a problem was when an officer was giving him a hard time. The rumor has it he broke the handcuffs and then stared at the officer, and the officer basically peed his pants and blew his whistle and screamed, and that's when he came into the adjustment center, because he was on death row at the time.
And at what point? So California got rid of death row. I don't know the timeline here. All those people who were there, it sounds like a lot of them just died naturally after a while.
Yeah, some of them died naturally. You still have a lot of inmates that are sentenced to death. Gavin Newsom put I don't know what it's called, a moratorium or something on it, and just froze it for right now. And then his idea was to, and it wasn't just his idea, it was Department of Corrections' idea, to make San Quentin a rehabilitation center in a big hospital. And so they got rid of death row, and they got rid of segregating a lot of the inmates and letting them all in the main line and spreading out all over. And it's hasn't really worked out very well, but I think it depends on who you talk to, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't seem like it has worked out anywhere. And I want to talk a little bit about more just societal issues, because I know that you started getting into undercover work and also just working in the communities, and what you're doing today is actually has become a really great open door for ex-cons to come and work out and to do whatever they can to continue to improve their lot in life. But the next thing we have is, of course, the big one of the night that I can't wait to hear about, and that is meeting Charles Manson. So I got some pictures here we're going to get to in a couple of seconds, but can you talk about the first time making eyes with him? Like what was the what was that first interaction when he realized, oh, he's being handled by somebody new, and your relationship kicked off?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact year it was, because I was in the adjustment center from 87, late 86, all the way till I left in 92. Maybe it was the beginning of 87, all the way to 92. And I can't remember exactly what year he had came in there, but he was in there for a good 3 or 4 years while I was there. And I remember running showers, and G-Rod had told me that Richard Ramirez Charles Manson was down on the left side, the famed row. And while we're running showers, he decided he wouldn't take very many showers, but he decided he wanted to take a shower one day. So I had him turn around through the food. You'd reach through the food port and put on the handcuffs, and then yell down at the end of the tier for them to open the door. And they opened the door, and he stepped out and kind of like, he didn't lunge at me, but I think he was trying to startle me. And then he looks at me and he goes, "Monahan." And I said, "Yes." He said, "That's Irish." He goes, "You're Irish, so come on, Irish, let's go." And then he started walking down towards the shower, and got him in the shower and handcuffed him. And he took, I don't even know if he took a shower, because he still looked the same when he came out. But that was the first time I ever dealt with or talked to him. And he was running showers.
And that's when he gave you your name, Irish.
Yep.
That's so before you left there, I'd love to get a little bit deeper into these damn monitors, man. I'll tell you. How long were you dealing with Manson regularly, that you see him on a regular basis?
About 5 days a week, you would see him.
For how many years?
Oh, for at least 3 or 4 years.
Oh, so you got, damn, there must have been some pretty, mano a mano moments.
Yeah. And at some point after I had left, they shipped him off to Corcoran after he left San Quentin. And he had been all over. He's been to a bunch of was in the different prisons throughout California during his time. He was in Vacaville for a while, Corcoran, San Quentin. I don't know if he's ever at Folsom or not. I can't remember.
What were those wild-eyed public persona of his versus private interactions? What do you think it was at that point? You know, he knows he's never getting out of prison. So is it really just that all he's got left is maintaining his brand or something like that? Because I don't know. Is there a different? First of all, is there a difference between his television persona that it's all over the place and confusing and whatnot and gruff, and then what you knew 5 days a week for 3 or 4 years?
He definitely put on a show for the cameras, but he was still kind of strange. He talked, I don't know how to say it any better, but he talked like a hippie, like a real heavy old 70s hippie. You know, a lot of you dig and ooga booga and hey man and Irish, and he would talk a lot like that when you're talking to him, so it was easy to get confused with what he's talking about. And he would start talking about the world and what the world needs and kind of confuse you a little bit. But when you took him to an interview in front of the cameras, that's when he'd really put on a show and do his little karate kicks and screaming and yelling, and us as Crux officers were kind of used to it, so we didn't jump at him or nothing like that. We just let him do his thing, you know. And then I remember one day bringing him back from one of his interviews. He had asked me, "Hey Irish, how'd I do?" Like, what do you mean, Charlie? He said, "Well, how'd I do? You think I gave them what they wanted? You know, they always want the show of Charles Manson." I said, "Yeah, I think you did good. I don't know." I said, "I don't know if I could do that though, because I worry about things like that, putting on a show for people and stuff." And he goes, "Oh, don't worry about it, Irish. You live one time. Just live your life and be happy." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I never really thought of it much till lately, where I guess that was life advice from Charles Manson.
Life advice. So we give life advice. And I was gonna, you know, as you're saying that, I said, what other life advice do you remember that he gave you? But I mean, that's some good life advice right there. You only live once and go out and. But you know, what about the swastikas? He loved his swastikas, man. Was that part of the show too? Did he seem like that? Well, you know, to be the hippie, but also be the National Socialist. It doesn't seem like it jives.
I think that was just him, and how the world's evolved now. I would consider that he might not even knew it then, but that was his brand. You know, everybody's trying to make a brand nowadays, and that was the brand of Charles Manson. He would put it in all his signatures, and he had it on his forehead, obviously. And if you saw his mail that he would write, he would have it not only in his signature, but a lot of the writing that he would have swastikas in it.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to see the some of the artifacts that he gave you that you sent me the pictures of. It's it's consistent there with the branding. And I know that when we were just talking about Richard Ramirez, whether or not you discussed his case with him or whatnot, he seems Manson seems to be much different than Richard Ramirez. Just from what you're saying here. So I know that you're in the position at the time. Yours is to maintain orderliness in this prison environment, but you're also in a unique position to hear prisoners relitigate their case all over, time and time again. So over the time that you were with Manson in particular, did he ever make you second guess his personal responsibility in the murders?
They didn't make me second guess it, but he would. I remember specifically in the holding cage talking about the Sharon Tate murders, and he said he wasn't even there, man. He don't know why them people did that. He goes, I didn't tell them to do that, and then I remember him going off on some other subject, so I just left it alone after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things you probably best to do after a while. Especially once you've gotten all that good life advice, you leave with a credit balance if you can.
Right.
But boy, yeah, you know what? Let's. I have a birthday card here. This is something.
Yes.
Now here, well, first of all, here's you. I just want to put this up on the screen here. There you are. What is this? Is this the first year on the job?
No, that's probably my second or third year in there. I'm the guy in the middle, standing in the back right behind the sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a Polaroid camera in there. I don't know if anybody remembers Polaroid cameras, and decided to take a couple pictures, and that was one of the pictures of us. So me in the middle. I'm pointing. Me in the middle, looking at the camera. The guy right to my left was G-Rod. And me and him ran the first floor in the adjustment center for a good 3 or 4 years. And other officers and other sergeants, even captains or associate wardens, weren't allowed in the adjustment center unless we let them in. And we had to get approval from the lieutenant to let them in. And so
this is about this is about a year before you are moved, because you said it was about maybe 2 or 3 years that you were working there before you got in with people like Manson. So this is probably about a year before you met Charlie Manson? No,
that was the time right then. That holding cage that you see there, that's a holding cage behind me. And there's an officer standing right behind me. He's actually in the holding cage. That's at the end of the tier of the adjustment center on the first floor. And that holding cage is where we would put the inmates when we're running yard or running them to the doctor or holding them for deputies for transportation or whatever. And that holding cage right there, you see, we would let Charlie come out sometimes, and he had a guitar in the property room, and we would go get his guitar and hand it to him while he's in there. And he would sit and play his guitar and sing to us. He could sing and play his guitar pretty good.
Really? Did he play you any of his hits?
He played. I don't remember exactly what songs. I remember teasing him, telling him to play Helter Skelter.
you should
oh, come on, Irish,
play some Beach Boys too. There's always there are those rumors and bar trivia questions there. Well, here's the next thing I got for you. It's the thumbnail for tonight's show. I searched specifically for Charlie Manson circa 1986. So this is the face that you came to know pretty well. This because that's the time that you were working with him.
Yep, that's the one. That's right, the age that he was when I was dealing with him.
My oh my, that's just nutty. And then what's even better, what I think, is he made something for your wife that she didn't particularly like, didn't he?
Yes.
And yes. It's a birthday card. No.
Yes, it is. Okay,
so I have it right here. This is a self-portrait birthday card that Charles Manson made for your wife, and he insisted on it. And what did she think about this?
She didn't really want it in the house. She thought it was weird. and it's we got off at 2:00 during the week, and I worked one weekend day a week. I think I worked Sunday through Thursday. I think I had Friday, Saturdays off. And we're getting ready to leave, and Charlie is in the back yelling for me. Irish, come down here. I said, I'm going home, Charlie. He says, no, come down here real quick. So I got one of the officers to go down there with me. One of them that's in the picture, actually. And let's go down there and see what he wants real quick. It was Mario Gates who was with me. So I go down there, and Charlie hands that through the bars to me, through the food port, because they had screens, so you couldn't reach through the bars. And he goes, here, give this to your wife for her birthday. And so I looked at him. I'm like, Charlie, how do you know it's her birthday today? And he goes, oh, come on, Irish. You know I know things. Come on, man. You dig? Just give it to her. I'm like, Charlie, how do you know it's her birthday? I'm not going to leave until you tell me. And he says, well, when I was down in the holding cage playing the guitar, you went in the office, and the office was right across from the holding cage. And back then you didn't have cell phones or anything. He goes, you picked up the phone in the office and called her and told her happy birthday.
Oh.
I'm like, oh.
How sweet.
Okay. Well, thanks. I didn't know what to say. Yeah, and was I supposed to take it? No, probably not. I probably would have got in trouble if people knew I took that back then.
I mean, but it's something that you can't really. There's no duplicate. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something else there. It's a self-portrait, and it's not made out to your wife. And so, I mean, if you're ever in a hard spot, you want to buy yourself a car, you can put this on eBay. No doubt about
Yeah,
it.
I've had so many people tell me that, and the problem with it is I would want so much money for it, and people are going to think I'm crazy for this. It would have to be 500,000 to 800,000, and the reason why is not for me, not for greed. I would I would want to get so much money for it that I could take the majority of the money and donate it to like a victims' rights group or a scholarship programs and have enough money to make a difference. Not $1,000 here, not $2,000 here. I would donate the majority of it to make a difference for a couple like inner city kids, some of the victims' rights groups. Give them enough money to where they can actually benefit from it. Uh, would I use some of it? I actually got bills I'd like to pay off, but the majority of it would be donated, and that's the only way it'd be worth it to me. I would give them the whole, the card, the other stuff, my ID, everything, so they can show that it's validated and it actually came from San Quentin, from the hands of Charles Manson. And it would have to be some rich millionaire, or billionaire that has a weird art fetish.
You know what? You just, I don't know, you may not have to hold your breath too much longer, Darren, because especially in true crime, it is a genre that is exploding with such interest right now. I mean, there may be somebody one day that would want to pay $750,000 for that to put it into some sort of a museum and just keep it as an exhibit or something. I mean, if Hunter Biden could be getting more money for his finger paintings than a Picasso sells in Christie's, it's possible. It really is possible. This is an actual piece of history. So just saying, it's not impossible, and you just never know. When was the last time you saw Charlie before either you left San Quentin or he got sent off? When was the last time you guys saw each other forever?
I think it was in 1992 or 91, the end of 91. It was one of my last days at San Quentin, and what had happened was there was rumor that they were going to give me and G-Rod a job change, that we had gotten in some trouble in there for. They thought we did something on purpose to an inmate, and it was an accident. He got caught in the door and hurt himself. And so being young at the time, I was 20, I don't remember how old I was, 27, 26, something like that. I'd have to sit and actually think of the time and the dates. But I just figured I'll just transfer. I'm going to transfer, and you're not going to let me work where I want to work here. I'll just transfer closer to home. At the time, I lived in Vacaville. So I figured I'll just go work at Solano State Prison, which was a huge mistake on my part.
Yeah, you said before that's where you said the inmates were really running the prison, and the whole culture was flipped on its head. You said,
yes, it was at San Quentin, and I remember going down saying goodbye to Charlie and a few of the guys out there. Hey, it's my last day. They didn't say much other than good luck. There was a guy in there that a hardcore guy, Frank Coffey, who I later saw and would arrest several times with the Richmond Police Department when I wound up there. But to answer your question, that was in 91. San Quentin, the officers were different. The inmates were different. Nobody told on each other there. The officers would actually fight in the parking lot to settle their beefs. They wouldn't go run and tell their supervisor. Was it wrong? Yeah, it probably was wrong looking back on it now. But that's just the culture of the prison. And when I went to Solano State Prison, I worked in the kitchen, and the inmates would tell on each other, and I wasn't used to it. I never had inmates tell on each other. You just didn't. If an inmate at San Quentin needed to do some work, and he had another inmate as his supervisor, that inmate would make sure that work got done. He wouldn't go run into the correctional officer or the prison guard and tell them. They would just handle it until it's done. And it wasn't like that at San Quentin. The officers would tell on each other for doing stuff wrong. The inmates would tell on each other. It was crazy to me. It was just a different culture that I didn't like.
Again, as we say, it's almost like a terrarium, but just a controlled, separate society from prison to prison. You know, what goes on inside, the culture, the laws, the way that you adhere to those rules and stuff like that. And it's fascinating for us to listen to, of course, since we didn't have to work through it like you did. But when you did that, did you ever have to deal with in either place? Were you ever part of a situation where an inmate would either escape successfully, or did you ever personally thwart an escape attempt? What about that? Because with any prison, there's always stories and curiosities of just really how airtight everything is. Can an inmate get himself on the outside? Have you ever been around for that?
No, I haven't. I was never part of anything or saw anything. I do remember there was a inmate. God, I used to know his name and I can't think of it for the life of me right now. He was a lifer inmate, one of the only inmates to actually get assigned to the fire department at San Quentin. Wasn't Bear. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He had actually was going to get paroled out. He spent most of his life in prison, and he had actually got a parole date. And I wasn't working at the time, but he walked out of San Quentin from the fire department and walked down to the store in Marin, got on the telephone, the payphone, and called San Quentin to tell him that he escaped. Because he didn't want to get paroled. He didn't know what to do. And so they went back and got him. I think he got another year out of it, but he had to live in the hole then, an ad seg unit. And then he eventually paroled. And then the last time I saw him, he was selling T-shirts in front of San Quentin at one of the executions that was being done at the time.
You bring up something that we have heard and seen so many times in, again, pop culture, movies, TV shows, whatever, or a person has been locked up for so long that they will go out of their way to find ways to extend their time, sometimes indefinitely, inside of the system because they are petrified of being let loose, of being, not necessarily of what they may do, but but having to live maybe outside of that regimented kind of lifestyle, that this was a place that gave them order and gave them a routine or something like that. And to be totally cut free of that, for a lot of people, it's been known is petrifying. What can you talk about with that in particular? Because obviously here's one instance, but this is something everybody has heard about.
Yeah, I think they just get so institutionalized that that's their life. That's all they know. Especially when they're going in there at 17 and 18 years old, they're getting, adult life sentences. And then as they proceed with the legal system, they get a date after they've already spent 30 years in prison. They don't know what to do when they get out. Back then they get handed $200. What can you do with $200?
Nothing.
And yeah. And
you can buy some granola bars at Whole Foods.
Right. So they were just used to their program. And if you talk to most of I call them convicts or inmates, none of them like being in county jail because there's no program there. There's no regular routine. They all want to hurry up and get to one of the state prisons so they can program and have a job and, wake up at certain times and exercise at certain times and do things. In the county jail, they don't have that available. They just sit around.
Yeah. It's just, it's insane. So like when you left there, when you got out of the prison system, you went from corrections and then you went to the police academy. Is that how that worked?
Yeah. Yes. I was at Solano at the time, and I had a friend talk me into being a reserve officer in the small city called Dixon, California. So I did it to see if I would like it. And I was amazed that you got paid to drive around in a police car. Well, Dixon, nothing happened. I mean, it was just kind of boring. You'd maybe write a traffic ticket once in a while. But I'm glad my friend talked to me doing that. He's actually the mayor of Dixon now. But from there, I applied to a couple places, and Richmond hired me.
And that's Richmond, California, right? We're not talking Virginia.
Yeah, no, it's Richmond, California. And back then, if you can look at the FBI statistics and stuff, it would go back and forth from number 1 and number 2, the most dangerous city in the United States. And it went by per capita. It was a population of about 100,000, and we averaged one homicide a week. I think there were 64 one year.
Wow.
It's gotten a little better nowadays. It's still a rough city, but it's gotten better.
Well, we don't hear about it. There's always these crimes. I'm sure that now that you say it, I'm going to keep my eyes open. I'm going to see Richmond pop up on all of the top 10s or something like that. But it really does not get a lot of attention compared to Baltimore, Chicago, parts of New York City, etc. So yeah, I naturally thought when I reading a little bit more about you, I naturally thought that you were spending some time on the East Coast.
Right.
In Virginia, and I was like, was Richmond, Virginia, really that bad in the early '90s? So it completely went over my head here. So tell me a little bit about this, because you're talking about going to work in Richmond, California, pretty dangerous place in itself statistically. How did your time in the prisons in San Quentin and Solano, how do they prepare you for working, especially street units, and even the undercover work you did? I would love to hear about that, because that's intense.
Yeah. They you went through the police academy at the time. I think it was 18 weeks. It was either 18 or 21 weeks. So it's kind of a long academy. And then when you hit the street, the advantage I had was I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to talk to these, the criminals, I guess you'd call them, the guys that have been in and out of prison. And some of them even recognized me from San Quentin. They knew I worked there, and so it made it easier to deal with them. And some of the newer cops that started off as a cop at 21, 22, they don't know how to deal with people. They think they got a gun and badge and people are just going to do what they say, and they find out real fast that's not how that works. And I remember pulling a car over at 1:30 in the morning going into North Richmond. North Richmond was even worse than Richmond, but it was part county and part city. And I had stopped this car of 4 guys in it about 1:30 in the morning, and we were super busy, so I had nobody to cover me. And as I walk up to the car, they all had their hands out in front of them, like on the dash and on the back headrest of the car. And I walked up to him, and he said, "Why'd you pull me over?" I said, "Well, you're speeding. I got you on radar." And he says, "Oh, okay." He goes, "Well, I just want to let you know that I'm on parole. He's on parole. I'm sitting on a handgun. He's sitting on a handgun. And if you look in the back seat, there's a shotgun laying on the floor." Well, a lot of people would have freaked out about that. And inside, I was freaking out, because they could have shot and killed me at any time they wanted, and there's nothing I could have done about it. But I remember telling them, "Okay, hang out here. I'm going to walk back to my car. I'm going to get some help. And then when my help gets here, we're going to pull you guys out and take you to jail." And he said, "Okay." And they were older guys, and it was really, really different. So as the help got there, not only did they have what they had, but the other 2 in the backseat both had guns. And I remember interviewing them, talking to the guy. I'm like, "Well, what happened?" And what threw me off about the car too, one of the reasons I stopped it was because it was 2 white guys in the front seat. Well, in that beat at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of white people. It was you're either buying dope or lost. And they were what I refer to as convicts. They would answer your questions respectfully, but they wouldn't give you any information. And they said, we were just driving. And I asked them point blank, I said, "Well, you obviously all of you knew you're going to go to prison, and you're going back to prison. You could have done anything you want. You could have shot me before I got to the car. He goes, yeah. He goes, our problem's not with you guys. Our problem's not with the police. And we need the police. He didn't say we need the police. We understand why the police are there, and you're not our problem. And so we'll just go do our prison time, and then we'll get back out and take care of business that we're supposed to take care of.
And of course, that business is all gang related.
I'm not sure if it was gang related or not, because these two guys in the front, they had a bunch of tattoos, white guys, but they weren't your typical gang members from Richmond. And we never could figure out what they were doing. They were obviously going to do something. So maybe my thought was maybe they were hired by somebody else to go take care of somebody. I have no idea.
You know, I'm a big fan of The Sopranos, and I remember there's a couple of points inside of the series where, of course, the nature of their work in this in the crime family comes up, and you know what they do and how they ply their trade and the screws that they have to put to people sometimes, and those who just got to go, and the way that the outlook was, you know, this is, you know, we're soldiers. This is the nature of our war. This is the nature of how we maintain. I mean, it goes back for like a millennia too. But when you tell me the story about the four guys inside of the car, heavily armed, but also perfectly accepting of their situation, that, you know, they transact with time. That, oh yeah, okay, we're going to have to do our time. But this was something that obviously they never had any choice. This was a duty that they were doing. And
Correct.
And this was just something that came along with that duty, that you're going to have consequences. But the level of acceptance in that is really fascinating. It really is.
Yes. It was, and I didn't work patrol a whole lot, and before I went into narcotics, undercover, and I remember one of the other stories I tell was I was the undercover officer. You would have detectives that would do cases, and then they would need someone to work for them, like be the undercover officer. Well, I was one of them, and we were on a DEA FBI task force, and this one Hispanic guy, his name was Ben, him and his brother, we had heard were selling pounds of methamphetamine. And so I had purchased an ounce from him. I had real long hair and a beard. I rode a Harley, not a police Harley, but a undercover motorcycle. It just worked better. And I had purchased an ounce, and I purchased a pound. And then I went to his apartment, and the idea was to buy 5 pounds of methamphetamine. I'm sorry. 5 pounds. And I remember getting there, and of course we had surveillance set up. We had a SWAT team ready to come in and bust everybody when I called the bus signal. And I went up the stairs, and I went inside there, and it seemed pretty cool. I mean, chill. I don't mean cool. Just, you know, I was comfortable. His wife was there. His kids were there. His brother was there. And so I went in the back room. He asked me, he goes, "Do you have a gun?" I said, "Yeah, I got a gun." He goes, "Put it on the bed." So I put it on the bed. And then he reached down and pulled 2 pounds out and threw it on the bed. He goes, "Here, give me the money for the 2 pounds, and then I'll go get the other 3, and you can come back and get the other 3. Well, it was a decision I had to make at the time. I said no. I said, I want 5 pounds. The idea is to purchase 5 pounds. I used a story. It was for somebody else, a bigger fish in Marin. And I'm not leaving here, you know, until I get the 5 pounds. He said, okay. He goes, well, it's still on its way. So I remember leaving. He goes, back then yet we had pagers. He goes, I'll page you when it gets here. I said, cool, I'm waiting. So I left. And I remember the FBI being all upset because I left the dope in there. You know, I didn't call the bus signal, and so they were scared that we were going to lose it and all that. Well, as I'm waiting for the other 3 pounds to show up, I'm getting radio transmissions from the case agent, and he's telling me, okay, the kids are leaving, the wife's leaving.
Oh,
this one I never figured out. They dragged a carpet up the stairs into the apartment, but I also know nobody else has showed up, and so my pager goes off, and I call him on a telephone, on a payphone. I said, "Hey Ben, what's up?" He said, "Okay, it's here. I got it. Come get it." I'm like, "Okay," and I forget how much money we had. We had like $40-something thousand. I can't remember off the top of my head how much it was back then. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, well, I know he doesn't, but I can't tell him that. So we decide for me to go back over there, and I go back over there, and I had a friend of another undercover officer driving the car for me, and his job was just to sit in the car with the money. And I get out, and Ben says, "Hey, grab the money and come up. I got it." I'm like, "You have it up there now?" And again, I knew he didn't. So to me, I'm going to get killed or ripped off or something, right?
yeah.
He goes, "Well, it's on its way." I said, "Okay, well, let's just hang out here then until it gets here." So as we're standing there, these two mopes pull up in some junky car. They call them mopes or mules, that would run dope from Mexico back and forth. And he says, "Okay, it's here now. They have it." I said, "Okay." So they go up the stairs, and I remember going up the stairs last, still thinking this is odd. And when I went in the front door, I saw the carpet laying up against the couch. And in the kitchen, there was an AK-47 sitting on the kitchen counter that wasn't there before. And I thought, man. So then Ben stops and says, "Okay, go ahead." And I said, "No, go ahead." He goes, "No, man, don't be nervous. There's no reason. We're going to make money. This is going to be a weekly thing." You said. I said, "Yeah, it can be." I said, "We just got to make it happen." And so he goes down the hallway. I go down the hallway, go back in the bedroom, and now there's a shotgun sitting there, two more handguns, and then the 2 pounds of methamphetamine.
Just the two.
Yeah. So I'm like, "Well, that's two." And he tells the other two guys, and they pull out three out of their waistband. One had two, and another one had three. Throws it on the bed. He said, "Okay, see, it's here." I said, "Okay, let me go down and get the money." So as I'm going down the stairs, the bus signal was "Alex gonna like this," and I had a wire, a pager wire that they could monitor my conversation. The other undercover officers. And Ben said, "What'd you say?" I said, "Alex gonna like this." He says, "Well, that's. I thought you said his name's Mark." I said, "No, that's my buddy in the cars, Mark." Well, for whatever reason, it made Ben super nervous.
Shit.
And I'm waiting for the SWAT team and everybody to pull up, and they're not coming. And I'm almost to the car now where I'm going to have to open the trunk and show Ben the money. So as I'm opening the trunk and pulling the duffel bag out with the money, that's when the SWAT team shows up, and they all, they throw me on the ground, handcuff me, grab the other two guys that brought the dope, handcuff them. Well, Ben and his brother got away. They jumped the fence and took off on the other side. We didn't have it sealed off. Something went wrong where we didn't have people over there. I don't know what happened or what the mistake was. So they get away. And we arrest the other guys and take care of, book the dope, book all the guns, wind up searching the apartment, finding more guns. And we didn't hear from them. And rumor was that Ben's brother got killed in Mexico by the cartel or somebody, for introducing me. He was the one who introduced me to his brother.
This is straight out of Breaking Bad right here.
Right. So about a year goes by, and the case agent, by now we have Nextels. I don't know if you remember what Nextels were.
I do.
Right? We had just gotten these brand new Nextels and stuff, and we thought we were really something. But he calls me and says, "Hey, what are you doing right now on the Nextel?" I said, "Well, I'm typing a search warrant up right now. What's up?" He goes, "I think Ben is over here at the gas station." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, right down from his house, down the street from his house." I said, "Okay, I'm on my way." He goes, "Come over here and see if that's him." So now I'm driving an old Cadillac, and I'm trying to get over there. I'm thinking he's going to be gone before I get there. Well, I pull up and pretend like I'm going to get gas. and he's still there. He had went into the store and bought stuff, which delayed his time from leaving. And he walks by, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, what's up, Dave?" I go, "Good, Ben. How are you?" I went by Dave. And he was good, just trying to survive. And then he looks at me and he goes, "I'm going to go to jail, huh?" I said, "Yeah, Ben, you're going to go to jail." He goes, "I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive home so I could say goodbye to my wife and kids." I said, "Ben, you can't do that. You can't go nowhere." He goes, "No, that's what I'm going to do." Well, again, you got to decide, do you are you going to fight the guy by yourself in the parking lot of the gas station? You have no help. Your buddy's down the street watching you. So he jumps in his car and takes off before I can get in my car. And I tell the case agent what's happening. So he calls patrol. By the time we get to his apartment, patrol finally shows up and pulls him over and stops him, handcuffs him, sticks him in the back of the police car. And while we're standing there getting ready to go up into his house, one of the officers comes and gets me and goes, "Hey, Ben wants to talk to you." I said, "Okay." So I go over there, open the door. I said, "What's up, Ben?" He goes, "Hey, man, can you do me a favor?" I said, "Yeah, what's that?" He goes, "Can you bring my wife and kids down here so I can say goodbye to them?" So I did. And then I don't know what, I think he pled out and got like 10 years or so. I can't remember what happened to him. But I remember him saying goodbye to his wife and kids because they weren't going to see him for a long time. But that was probably one of my undercover stories that really sticks in my head that I remember for some reason.
Again, there's just another example of it's a life that you lead. You know the risks. Maybe the reward is big for a little while, but it's all temporary, and you can't really flash it. It's all going to be on the down low, and then the real cost comes out later on. Either you lose your life, you lose major chunks of your life. But the biggest thing, if anybody who has a family and is close to their family knows, is that that is really most of what life constitutes. It constitutes life, I should say, is these little moments that compile over time with people you love. And right there, when the walls are closing in on you, people like Ben start thinking about the only thing that was really important again. And maybe that perspective is too little too late. I don't know if do you know anything about his life since then? If he got out, if he turned himself straight?
Nope, I don't know. I don't know whatever happened to him after that. Like I said, the rumor was that he pled out to like 10 years. I don't know if that's true or not.
Is this picture of you right here?
That was me after that operation. Those are the guns and the dope that we got out of his apartment and that's the dope I purchased from him.
Jeez, man. I mean, that the tension that you just built up right there from that scene inside of the apartment. That's television worthy right there. Like I was saying, it's right out of Breaking Bad. If you have the family being vacated and a carpet being brought up, I mean, the only thing I thought, and again, from watching too much television, is that's to dispose of you, that carpet. And
that's what ran through my head. And I know there's other guys out there, undercover officers that have done it for life, that have done way more dangerous and bigger operations than me. But I don't think it gets much more scarier than that. I've heard a couple other stories from people that would scare the hell out of me. But you just got to suck it up and follow through with what your job is.
Well,
and finish it.
Now, as far as your job now, of course, old school gym owner. I've got the link to your gym in the description of the episode. I was taking a look at it there too. I take it with your gym, and I was looking at the website earlier on. You don't kick people out of your gym when they grunt during a deadlift, do you? Like Planet Fitness or something like that. It's just nice clanking plates. It's a nice loud environment. It must be nice to work out there.
Yes, yes. It's just an old style, old school gym in a big warehouse, and the side door opens up to outside, and you can scream and yell. And the only thing we ask is don't drop our dumbbells because they cost money when they break.
Yeah.
We don't have any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Clothing code, or no, you can train without a shirt if you want. You can just we play loud music, heavy metal music, and just have a good time. And with that, Jim, I think you touched on it a little bit. I will let it's not all about the money for me. As long as I can pay the bills, I'm good. But a friend of mine, a real close friend of mine, who runs Narcotic Anonymous classes because he's an ex-addict. They lost their space once, so I let them use an office in the gym to hold their Narcotics Anonymous classes. And through that, I would meet a lot of people that had just gotten out of prison. Some I even knew. One guy, I he remembers me more than I remember him, but that's fine. And they just got out of prison. They don't have jobs, they don't have money, but they want something to keep their mind off things. So I'll let them train in our gym for free. And when they get a job, they can start paying me. And I haven't had one of them not pay me yet. It's worked out really good. Is one of my best members is this guy. He's a Norteño, because I had to remind him he has Norteño across his neck because he wondered how I knew what he was. But he locks the place up for me. He has the codes to all the doors, and he'll clean for me. He'll kick people out that don't pay, and regular members who they're for whatever reason their credit card hasn't been working for a couple of months. He'll go talk to them. Sometimes I have to tell him to relax a little bit. It's not a prison,
Right.
But, and he's still pretty institutionalized in his head. Like, he'll go through periods where he just sits in his room and won't leave, and then he'll call me. Hey, can I come back to the gym? Yeah, you can come back. Get over here.
Let me ask you something, Darren, because this is where all of your experience and all of everything that you've done, all the places you've been, really, here we are, not only how it's playing out in your life at the moment, but even in just society at large. And everybody's always wondering how the criminal justice system can be reformed and what would make criminal justice more successful, especially in its ability to help troubled yet otherwise, good people. I mean, not everybody is a Richard Ramirez, but some people just are. They're their own worst enemies. They can't get out of their own way, and perhaps there is a way to make criminal justice a little bit more, rehabilitative. It's something like that. That's not soft, but just effective. What do you think is something that is really lacking, or what would be a really great idea? Something that you've seen over the years you've said, man, if they would only do this, it would make outcomes so much better. It would make deterrent. It would be a good deterrent. I don't know. What are some of the thoughts you've had over the years on this?
I think a lot of people would be surprised at my answer is because I don't know if a lot of things can be fixed. And one of our hugest problems is obviously drugs. Now it's fentanyl. That causes so many people to spiral down. And then they get out and they hang out back with their same friends again, and they do it all over again. But when I say surprised by my answer, is they're trying so many different things to see if it works. And by trying this, it gets softer and softer, and the penalties get less and less. And then it's gotten so now where I've talked to guys who want to go back to prison so they can play softball with their friends again. They don't care. I think we need to go back to where it was harder. You got 3 years, you do 3 years. You don't. I think that's more of a deterrent than programs. I think, and from my experience dealing with and talking to people that are addicts, they fix it when they're ready. And you have to be able to have a program or have something for them at the same time, so that when they are ready, you can give it to them and you can make it work. And San Quentin, even back when I worked in the late 80s and 90s, they had programs. They had Narcotics Anonymous, Alcohol Anonymous. They had schools and stuff that they could go to and stuff. And those that wanted it took advantage of it. And most of them never came back. Most of them, one of the guys that talked me into taking the job as a correctional officer wound up in prison at Solano State Prison when I worked there. And he didn't like it. And he wanted to get back out and get back to working at his muffler shop. And I remember getting a phone call from a captain once saying, "Hey, the rumor is you know this guy, Dave." I said, "Yeah, I know Dave." And going back to the race stuff, he goes, "Well, he's causing problems." I said, "Well, what's he doing?" "Well, in the morning, he's working out on the white weight pile, and at night, he's working out on the black weight pile. And now the inmates are talking about stabbing him." Well, this is at Solano, so I'm thinking that ain't never going to happen there. But I remember going and talking to him, and he says, and he was a great, big, huge, buff guy. Not too many people would mess with him. And he said, "Yeah, I work out with my friends in the morning, and I work out with my other friends at night. They're not going to do, tell them I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Let them try to stab me. I'll take care of them." And he's the only guy I know of to this day that was able to do that without getting stabbed or hurt or anything. But when he got out, I went and saw him at his muffler shop, and it was a deterrent for him. He did not want to go back to prison under no circumstances. He didn't like it. He didn't like being there. He felt he didn't feel in control, and he didn't like that.
Yeah.
So, and I know I didn't answer your question exactly or specifically.
No, you did. You did, because we've covered similar things like this on the show, especially when it comes to drugs, domestic drug policies. Obviously, when we start talking international, that's something in and of itself altogether. But
Right.
For example, we've concentrated a lot in the last few years on what cities like Portland, Oregon have done with drug decriminalization, to the point where they have become almost like a Valhalla for drug users. People will come from all over the country. Drug tourism, where they'll come in there and they'll just set up a tent, and the local government will give them clean crack pipes and give them clean, top choice stuff. And the police are essentially, at least for a time, were being told that they have to just make sure that everybody's life as a open using drug addict right there on the sidewalk, where commerce and children used to walk to school and all that stuff used to be. Now it's just an open air drug den. It's obviously backfired in many ways. But of course, the other question is, how harsh is too harsh? You're saying it doesn't have to be so harsh. It just needs to have some firm standards, and there's just should be no negotiating. That's what you're saying.
Right. And like the people addicted to drugs, unfortunately, it turns into homelessness. And out here in California, the homelessness is off the hook. And I think people like in Oregon are I think they mean well. I think they think they're trying to do something to help them. It's just a different mind thought. That in my mind it doesn't work. And I remember in Richmond they had places for homeless people to live, but they didn't want to live there because of the rules. Couldn't have drugs in there. You have to be in at a certain time. You can't play loud music. I mean, there was certain rules that they didn't want to abide by. So they were free apartments to live in, and they refused. They wanted to stay on the street and do their drugs and not worry about, you drive through sometimes at 2-3 in the morning in the city of Richmond, they look like zombie land out there walking around.
Yeah.
But we're so busy that we didn't really have time to deal with them a whole lot. We just bounced around from call to call or from shooting to shooting.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we're seeing that in many major metropolitan areas these days. Philadelphia is well known for its almost like zombie-like neighborhoods now. I mean, then there's New York, speaks for itself. There's a lot. There's a lot. People are hurting all over the place. But Darren, I can't thank you enough for the time. Here's real quick. Here's a picture of you. Massive. You massive, man. Geez. And how old were you in this picture?
I was 51 in that picture.
And now this is you working in Virginia. I mean, not in Virginia, in Richmond.
Richmond, California. I was a lieutenant, and that was my last day. That was the day I retired.
Wow. Okay.
That was like November, on my actual physical time there was November 15th. I think my actual retirement date was in December.
And of course,
of 2015.
2015. That's 14 years after the 5-pound meth bust right there.
Yeah.
The sting operation. And now one last picture I have. This is the relic that Charlie Manson made for you?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily know if it was for me. He had made it, and I saw it. I said, "Oh, did you make that?" He said, "Yeah, you want it?"
So it's a scorpion.
Yeah, it's a scorpion.
Made out of what?
Socks and whatever threads he could get at the time.
And there's a swastika at the bottom there.
Yeah, he would unravel socks or the some of the strings in the boxers, the underwear and stuff, and then he would make stuff out of it.
Gee, I mean, it's very well done.
Yeah, he did quite a few of those. He liked doing stuff like that. I had a they called it an ankh. It's an Egyptian ankh once that he had gave me too, but I don't know whatever happened to that.
You should turn it into a keychain.
Right.
Go to the farmer's market with the Charlie Manson keychain. That's right. Insane. You know, this was a really interesting night. I hope that we can catch up again one day, Darren, because there's probably so much more to be said and to be asked, but we only have so much time here. Right, is there anything you want to leave people as far as just some parting shots? And of course, I have oldschoooliron.com in the description of this episode. I hope people go and check it out, especially if they're in your neck of the woods. I hope they start working out with you. But go ahead. Any parting shots you have for the audience tonight?
Yeah, no. Also, you know, they can reach me on Instagram at oldschoooliron. It's spelled with a SKOOL. But I just, the only thing I have to say is people just need to be people, man. Leave people alone. Let people be kind to everybody. Not if somebody goes to prison doesn't mean they're the biggest piece of shit in the world. You know, most of them have just made mistakes, don't want to go back. I learned that. And all this, the racism and the bias people have and the prejudice people have it's just so time consuming that goes nowhere. And people need to figure out a way to just let it go and let people be people. And just, if it doesn't affect you, then why do you worry about it so much? And I can never figure that part out. And I think I learned a lot from a lot of the people in prison, a lot of the people I worked with and ran into in Richmond, the city of Richmond. 99% of the people there are great people. They're just awesome. It's just that 1%, 2% that ruin the whole city for everybody. But people need to just relax and live life. You know, like Charlie said, stop worrying about stupid stuff and just live life. And people think that I'm too compassionate for the ex-convicts and inmates and stuff. No, I feel terrible for their victims and everything they did, and would love to give back in some way, but can only do so much.
Only do so much. You could only handle that man in the mirror. And great. I mean, thank you so much for all the stories and all the insight tonight, Darren. It's been wonderful to make your acquaintance, and I hope we speak again soon.
Yes, for sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the link for Old School Iron is in the description of this episode. And thank you so much for the time. That was great. Boy, oh boy. And also thank you for putting up with what I have to do with the switching of the screens, and I will get it all figured out soon. Hopefully. Jim Lee's on the case, but that's what we have. All right. So listen, we have about 19 minutes left. I have to do a couple of ads right now for our wonderful friends at Badlands. It is an honor for me to do it as well. And the first one I have up for you is GetSafeStreets.com. Now's the perfect time to secure your home and your loved ones. Get a free ADT smart home security system valued at $1,200 from ADT authorized provider Safe Streets. Plus, get a Google Nest doorbell camera at no cost and a $200 Visa gift card from the Safe Streets, the most trusted name in home security with more than 106,000 4.9-star trust pilot reviews. Visit getsafestreets.com/Badlands or call 925-529-6541. That's 925-529-6541 to speak to a representative today. $99 customer installation charge and purchase of new monitoring services required for their termination fee. And that's what we have. And also, if you look at that for a second, where is it again? Hold on. Don't you want this? Hold on, where is it? Don't you want this feeling of security right here? Right here. I saw it. There they are. Everybody just jumped onto their living room couch because they know that nobody is trying to break into their home to kill them. Hey, look. Yay, we're not getting killed. We're happy that see, everybody's happy. Don't you want to be happy like these people? I do. GetSafeStreets.com. NoMoreMurder.com. Anyway, there you have it. Okay, well, we'll be right back to take your calls and read through your super chats. So don't go anywhere because we're knocking on the end's door. No, I didn't do that right. Yes, I did. Okay, be right back.
By now, you've probably seen the new collab between Rise and Badlands Media. But I'll tell you what you haven't seen yet. The end of Clown World as we know it. But have no fear. Introducing the latest addition to the Badlands INTL lineup. The sequel to the best-selling Psy War series. We've been conditioned by these clowns to accept their circus. But it's time to unwind that and strike them out the history books. The future belongs to the real, and we've got it in droves. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/rise for the full line of premium and direct-to-garment streetwear. Made to order right here in the good old US of A, the heart of the resistance. The fall of Clown World is upon us, patriots. Let's make it official.
I will have the gabagool.
What?
The gabagool.
Money for the gabagool. The gabagool.
Hey, gabagool, Grandma.
Gabagool. Gabagool.
The gabagool.
Look at that gabagool.
Gabagool. A slice of gabagool.
I don't have to have
What
that.
he's trying to say is gabagool.
Guys.
The gabagool. Gabagool.
Bring him the gabagool.
Лежит в больнице. Доктора говорят, цирроз печени.
Okay. Actually, I'm wearing some Rise attire tonight. This is out of the Quite Frankly merchandise section. So yeah, this was our UN Peace Through Terror Redux shirt. It was an old 1992 flea market classic that we resurrected. So yeah, check out Rise attire, buy up all the Badlands stuff, and yeah, I love plugging Rise. So. All right, let's see what we have here. Starting on the Rumble, Two Dogs Mike D just hit me with a very generous gift. Oh, what a difference it would make. This makes such a difference. Thank you so much, Mike. One of the best interviews yet, Frank. Nobody could have done it better. And yes, we're up in the mountains watching Richmond, etc. with binoculars. Wow. Two Dogs Mike D. I'm glad you love it. I'm glad you love it. It was an honor for me to do, and Darren's work is fantastic. He actually, like I said, I thank our friend Brooklyn out there helped me get this one on the books. But I had seen him on Soft White Underbelly as well, and I just knew this was going to be great. So much good stuff. Grimbold72 says, love you, Frank. Wish I could watch more often live. That Saturday thing with Aurora was phenomenal. She was fantastic. You know, I even watched it. I don't watch anything that I do. Sometimes I have to go back and I have to watch segments of something that happens in the show because I think it might make for a good highlight, or I just want to see how it panned out, or there's whatever. But the times of me like being curious about, can't listen. I listened to that whole thing. I know my mother listened to it. I think my in-laws listened to it. Lauren listened to it. I've watched that. I think I watched it 2 times all the way through because I just love watching. She's just, I don't know, just incredible that I'm sitting here talking to someone that I had a hand in creating. And she's talking back and she's moving her hands and she's these crazy inflections with her voice. And oh man, it's been, I'm glad you liked it. There'll be more stuff like that. It was just impromptu. Jay Semo says, another excellent show. Great guest, great stories. Rubino82 says, I am at the Metallica concert tonight. Well, have a good time. Have a good time. I may be at the one in Philadelphia at the end of May on a weekend. So we'll see if I can go live from that. Anthony's doing some work with Live Nation, and they gifted it. So he's, you want to come with me? Said, sure. All right. That'll be on a Saturday or something like that. We'll see. YouTube. Max Meeks says, your show is excellent, Frank. Persistence paid off. Check out the American Exile Trilogy audiobook. I shall. And you know what? If you could do me a favor, email me about it, Max, because sometimes from the drive from here to home, I forget everything I did for the entire day. I am 13 minutes away from complete brain drain. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. All right. Let's go to quitefrankly.tv. We're going to open up the lines. It's 914-200-0269. Safety Net. What the hell's that? You be quiet over there. Safety Net says, happy heavenly 119 birthday to my grandma Perkins. You are missed very much. One love, Lynn, 119 years old. Incredible how years go by. Crown Weaver says, super brave of you, Darren Monahan. Dirturius says, when impeachment guru Congressman Sri Thanadar was young, Tarzan called him boy. Yes, well, don't do that. Not around him. Thanadar 3. What was his name again? Shri. Don't call Sri boy. You won't be walking back. Hogleg71, thank you. NX17, what does Darren think of prisons being privately owned for-profit companies? You know, there was a couple of really good articles on Reason.com on this, exploring just how privately owned they all are and stuff like that. I should go and dig that up again because it's not, you know, there's something to be considered with that. And we should look into it because that's something that used to be harped on constantly, and it's really gone away. Has not been spoken about in any big way recently. It's the first time. NX17's comment right there is the first time I even thought about that line in a while, and I have to have some materials on it. Would be a good topic to explore again. Let's see. The Sentinel says, great show, Frank. Interesting guest and fascinating story. My father-in-law thinks the USA turned bad after the Beatles, ergo Manson. He's 90 years old. Well, listen, Manson and the intelligence counterculture are inextricably linked. Now, I don't expect. I was not going to go there with Darren. Was not going to go there with Darren because I don't expect him to be, you know, to be keen on any of that stuff or whatever. But That cannot be. You know who just did a little bit more on that? I should have brought it up maybe a little bit more, knowing that this was going to be on the schedule. But when we were talking to Eric Hunley, he just put out a thread on Manson based on an interview he just conducted from a CIA standpoint. So I wonder about that. I wonder what could have been learned if Darren knew what questions to ask. And then again, do you really want to ask those questions, especially in such a tightly monitored environment? You just never know. You just never know. You have senators calling out CPS and losing their lives. What about this? Strong Joe, thank you. 123 SKG, thank you. Crown Weaver, great guest, interesting topic, thank you a bunch. Joe Bell who? Joe Bell you. NX17 says, wow, Frank, super interesting interview, skillfully presented. You're a master. We'll keep sharpening those knives, my friend. We have many years to do together, and a lot of different and new, exciting places I want to go with you all. And yes, we're going to be polishing and buffing and doing so many different things to this show to bring it to new, mature levels. Well, I mean, not too mature. Jeez, relax out there. The hell do I want to do mature? Ghostsmith801 on Badlands sent us a Rumble rant over there. So great to have this. Love the convo. Thanks, Frank and Irish. Well, thank you. And thank you to all of my friends over there who are watching on the Badlands Media Rumble. Please do me a favor and like all of these streams wherever you're watching. Like it on Badlands, like it on the Quite Frankly Rumble, like it on YouTube. It takes a nanosecond, ladies and gentlemen, nanosecond. But the likes are huge. And after this show gets off the air, come back and comment wherever you watch. Comment for the algorithm. Comment if you're watching it after the fact. If you are, this is tomorrow morning. If this is Friday afternoon and you're catching up and you've gotten this far, leave a comment right now. You know why? Because it works, because the engagement is great, and I really do take time to read as many comments and write back as much as I can. So that's all I got for you on that. That's all I have for you on that one. Team Smooth over on Badlands says, great addition to Badlands program. Way to go, Frankie. Well, it's great to have you. Great to have you. Great to have met all of you. Okay. And with that, I think that's what we'll do. We'll just get off a little bit early, and I will maybe take the last 3 minutes that I will reclaim here to try to figure out what's going on with this damned computer again. It's always something, as you know. But thank you again to Darren. Thank you to everybody at home. Stove, who just sent a nice tip on, quite frankly, superchat.com about a minute ago. If you watch this after the fact, if you're watching this overnight, and you're like, I wish I could send a super chat, you can. Send a stupid chat to, quite frankly, superchat.com, and I will read it on Friday night's show. Or you can send it over the weekend, and I'll read it on Monday night's show. You never have to wait with, quite frankly, superchat.com. And with that, I thank you all so much. Take care. Have a wonderful evening. And yes, until tomorrow, 7 o'clock, we're putting a bow on this one. Good night and be well.
I'll catch you on the flip.